Okay, we're holding, even though you might be ahead, we're holding Siman Tzadik Ches at the end, the last Seif test. This particular Seif actually touches on many, many topics, and in learning Hilchos Taaruvos, you may never actually get too deep or go beyond the scope of the Mechaber, the Ramah, the Shach. But I think it would not be right for us to just stop there. In order for one to have a real better understanding of what is really going on in Seif tests, it does require one to be me'ayin, look into a little bit in some other sugyas that are related, certain mishnayos, and of course the other meforshim that speak about it, concerning various topics. And because it's a very, very extensive topic, I decided to break it up in two parts, today and Thursday. And hopefully after that we'll go into the next Siman. But it is incredible. It really is an incredible area which is very, very different than everything else in Taaruvos. Why? Because in Taaruvos we're used to seeing, for the most part, Isur and Heter. That's what Taaruvos means. Forbidden mixtures. Where do you have forbidden mixtures? Isur and Heter. And all of a sudden here in the last Seif, we're introduced to a very different kind of concept. Isur and Isur. What about Isur and Isur? What if they mix? Do we apply the same rules of Bittul to them? Do they combine? If I have a little bit of this and a little bit, can I combine them? The Isur and the Isur. Yeah. What if I have a half a piece of this and a half a piece of that? Of course I'm not allowed to eat either of them. Do I transgress the Isur? If it's kazayis between the... There's so many questions here. And even the poskim here, it's not very clear how they hold, because there seems to be, of course, a big machloket poskim, big machloket rishonim, when it comes to the general ideas that are being expressed in this seif. You see, this seif has to do with the following topic. It has to do with the topic of isurim mevatlim zeh zeh. That's one topic. Do we say isurim mevatlim zeh zeh? Do we not? If we do, when do we say it? What that means is, can an Isur be mevatel another Isur? In the same way that a Heter is mevatel a Isur. In the same way that a Isur is mevatel a Heter. Two Isurim, can they be mevatel each other? What difference does it make? Well, we'll see. Another topic that needs to be looked at is Isurim mitzarfin zeh zeh. Can they combine? Do they combine? Mitzarfin, combine. And then, one of the most fascinating of all is a topic that you may never come across, unless perhaps a little bit later on in Tzadik Tes, or if you learn Hilchos Yain Nesach. And that's a concept called Kama Botel, abbreviated Kuf Beis. Little by little, an Isser vanishes, becomes Botel. So, in preparing the Shir, of course, you can imagine what I had to go through. All of this, otherwise, it's impossible to really make sense of it unless you understand as much as possible all of the sugyas together. We're talking about going through Mishnayos in Orla, in Truma. We're talking about Maseches Mila, Maseches Zvachim, right? Everything here. There's a Tosefta. In order to really understand what is going on, what each one holds, why does the Mechaber say what he says, what is he taking from, you really have to go through all of that. And that is why there couldn't have been a shir here last Thursday. If we want to do justice to this seif, it's very, very important to go one by one and see what's going on. The way to begin, I was going to do a PowerPoint projection on this. Yeah, I'm still considering it because there's nothing out there, anywhere in the world that I know, in any sefer, that really took all of this sugyas and put it together, and they should. They all belong together. And maybe I'll do that. It's such an important topic because you'll see it all ties in very, very nicely. The Mechaber here brings down a halacha. What's the halacha? He says, by the way, if you have a keder of 59 zaysim of heter, not 60, 59, okay? And you have two zaysim of different kinds of isurim falling in. One is dam, one is chaylev. Okay? Each one is mitzdaref with the 59 to cancel each other. In other words, you now have 60 against each other, against the dam, against the chaylev. The dam helps the heter to be mevato the chaylev. the chelev helps the heter to mevatel the dam. Wow, it's a chiddush. I mean, we don't know that, and you're not going to come across too much of this throughout Hilchos Taaruvos. Now, if there were 60, we would all agree that makes sense. 60, well, the first one was already batel.
Right, or subsequently, successively.
Right, but once you have 60, the first one was batel, okay, I can understand that, but I'm not so sure yet, because what if, even though it fell into 60, let's say the dam fell into 60, so it's batel, it's gone. What if the chelev is a little bit more than a kazayis? Well, now I have 61 kazayis because of the dam. Will that dam that is batel help me too? The answer is yes, we will see. So there are various scenarios, but this scenario is unique, for sure, because it's a chiddush. And what's the chiddush? That even if you don't have enough, you do have enough against one, if you have to borrow or use the other isser. So that's interesting. Mechaber, where do you learn this from? Where do you take this from? Okay? This is a big chiddush. Now the Mechaber, where does the Mechaber take his psakim usually? Rambam? The Rif, right? And the Rosh. Okay. Here he happens to have taken this from a tshuva of the Rosh. The Rosh was asked the question. This is the question that he was asked. This is the scenario that the Rosh was asked. In other words, he's actually quoting almost word for word the Rosh's question. Somebody asked the Rosh a question. I went and looked up the tshuva, because you really have to look at everything word for word. Nothing can be missed. Otherwise, sometimes you will not understand what's going on. Mechaber here is quoting the tshuva of the Rosh. The Rosh basically brings down, this is the case, this is the answer I gave. It's okay. They're mevatel each other, they cancel each other out. The isur is mitzaref with the heter to cancel out the other isur. Everything is fine. Why? I'll give you 3 reasons why. We're going to cover 2 of them tonight, and the other one we'll leave for Thursday.
Do we actually read now the Siftet Mechaber saying?
Read it last week, but I'll review it again. In case, okay. So one more time, we have 59 zaysim of heter, and we have 2 zaysim of isser falling into this gdeir, into this pot, 1 of blood and 1 of chelev. Kol echad, each one of the isur mitzaref im nun tet with the 59 shel heter levat chaver to cancel out the other one, the other isur. Okay. And the second part.
Elon's question, though, is this assuming that each one after the other same time?
Even at the same time.
Even at the same time.
Okay, that's the chiddush here.
At the same time.
That's how the shach learns.
At the same time.
At the same time. Okay, that's a chiddush. Okay, but that's a good point. I was going to talk about that. In reality, based on what the Mechaber says, it makes no difference. In other words, it fell in. Okay. The first one fell in, and it's not batel. Okay? It's not batel. It's only 59. Comes the other one that falls in, now it's batel. Okay?
Does it have the same time?
Not either one.
Have to be.
Doesn't have to be.
According to the Rama, it would have to be at the time.
We'll see. Not in this particular. Well, yes. Yes.
The Mechaber says,
What?
do we one after the other?
Yes. Okay? Right. We will see. We'll talk about that later on. But based on what the Mechaber says and how the Shach explains it, they could be even at the same time. What's even at the same time? Because the 2 of them are mixed. The 2 Isurim are together. You know, what koyach do they have now to falling in together and be mevatel each other? No, it works like that too. Or even if one fell in, it's not batel yet. The other one falls in now, and it makes it batel. Okay, that's what the Mechaber said. Now the second one. The second example, the second halacha in the Mechaber in Sif Tez is v'chen. If you have 29 zaysim of heter, 29 only. Shenofal bohem kazayis chelev in one pot. Ubigdeir acheres oyu shloishim shel heter. You have 30 of heter. V'nofal atechu kazayis shel dam, of blood. V'nisarvu b'shoigeg, of course. You didn't mix them intentionally. You're not allowed to do that. Mutter, it's okay. And the Rama adds, kol shekain if you have 2 zaysim. One echad shel gvina, one is there, one is milk, cheese. Ve'echad shel basar, and one is meat. They call echad mevat chaver, that each one, basar b'chalav here, right, will cancel each other out in 2 separate pots. Okay, this of course is going to bring up a question of chanan.
The 2 separate pots.
This idea, not the idea of basar b'chalav. the idea of two separate pots, we'll talk about it, will bring up the question called Chanan Bishar Isurim.
But Basar b'chalav.
Basar b'chalav, no.
Had not to do with it.
Basar b'chalav will not bring up the question of Chanan, because when they're two separate, there's no problem. You have a dairy rice, and you have a meat rice. This one had milk in it, this one had meat in it.
You're referring to one case of the top.
No, he's referring to the second case. The second case is when you have two pots, each one does not have a shear to the mevatel, right? The isser. So you have blood in 29, you have chalev, let's say, in 30. Or, the Rambam says, also, the more so, he says, if you have meat in one and dairy in the other one, and then they mixed. Okay? The same halacha would apply. That's what he seems to be saying. And that's true. The Mechaber says the same exact thing would be true. Whether they fell into one pot, whether they fell apart in two pots, and then they mixed. Now, when they finally mix, we do have that it requires shishim to cancel each one of the two isurim. Before, when they're in two separate parts, we don't, right?
Why isn't each separate that fell in now?
Yes, that's the.
No, each one is, and now.
Each one is treif in a sense. You can't eat each one, but somehow, before you got to asking a question, somebody in the house mixed everything together in one pot.
They didn't know that.
They didn't know. B'shoigig. It says b'shoigig. Okay? Somebody went ahead. You're right. These two pots would be treif. Somebody went ahead b'shoigig and mixed everything together in one kedera. And in this kedera, this big cholent pot or whatever, there is enough of the heter to cancel everything out between the heter and one of the isurim, that is. Okay? That's the scenario that we talk about. Either the first one where it's one pot to begin with. The second scenario is you have two pots. Each one is treif, but somehow they all combine together into one kedera. And now,
And they still have to be atzolis.
no,
Temperature.
nothing here. We're not concerned about heat right now.
If they're not cooking, what difference?
Okay, obviously. So we're talking about in a way that they became usher. Sure.
They still
Sure. They would have to have become usher. Right.
spread.
Yes. We're talking about in a situation where they spread. Obviously, yeah. Okay, so far, so good. This is the two scenarios. This is what the Mechaber brings. As I said, he quotes directly from the Tshuvas of Rosh. That's the question that Rosh was asked. And Rosh says, okay, everything fine.
So now we know Mechaber takes it from.
Yes.
And where does...
He was asked a question.
I understand, but how does he come to this conclusion?
That's what the shir is about.
Oh.
Okay? So Mechaber takes it from the Rosh. The Rosh was asked this question, was posed this question, and the Rosh says everything is okay. He says, for the following reasons, he gives 3. And that's where all the difficulties begin. That's where all the issues begin. In order to really understand what's going on here, you've got to take apart each one of them. The first explanation involves the topic of Isurin Mevatnim Zeh et Zeh. Okay? Says, you know what? I'll give you 3 reasons. One, there's a Gemara. Gemara in Zvochim Ayin Ches Amud Aleph. Machloikis there between Reish Lakish and Rabbi Elyahu. If you say Isurin Mevatlim Zeh et Zeh or not. Do you say that or not? Now, how did they come to that machlokes? They were discussing an incident of pigul, noiser, and tomeh. Same meat. Meat is meat. But one has an isser of pigul, one has an isser of noiser, and one is tomeh. Shebolelon, that he mixed them, right? And he ate it. What now? Was he over on a particular isser? Each one by itself may have had a shear. But once he mixed it together, what is he eating? So the Gemara over there discusses the various issues concerning this. Okay? I just turn it on. Yeah, just turn it on. Yeah. So the Gemara over there goes into that particular incident. What do we say about it? And Reish Lakish, of course, learns from that one of the things that he learns from that is that Isurin are mevatnim zeh et zeh, because there's not enough in the mixture in what you're eating at any given time for you to get malchus, because you need a kazais. And since we don't know exactly what you're eating at any given time, you don't have a hazhara, as the Gemara says, a warning. I'm just going to try to make it very, very brief here. Because of the mixture
I don't know what
between
to warn him about.
exactly, I don't know what to warn him about. It's not at any given time. You're not really eating one particular shir of a particular isur, right? And there are three kinds of isurim because there are three names. People know isur tameh. Okay, so he says, we learn from this. Since you're not transgressing, that perhaps that's the reason of isurim mivatlim zeh zeh. Now the whole Gemara goes on to discuss other things, and in the Maskana there, Rabbi Elyahu disagrees that you don't learn from necessarily that isurim mivatlim zeh zeh in the same way that mitzvahs are not mivatlim zeh zeh. That's what the Gemara over there discusses. But anyway, that's the sugya in Zvachim, and that's where it appears to be that this main halacha is taken from. Even though we will see as we continue that there is other sugyas in Shas that pretty much say the same thing, that there can be such a hechetimtza where an isur can be mevatel another one. But this is one. Now, what's the halacha there? Is the halacha isur mevatnim zeh zeh or not? We don't know from the Gemara, because the Rambam says ein isur mevatnim zeh zeh, and he brings the example of people in isur, even though that's not necessarily a good example. Why isn't that necessarily a good example? As we will soon see. But he just uses as an example of we don't pass in isur mevatim zeh zeh, and therefore, you would be, even though the main malchus, it all depends. If we'll see. It depends if you eat them together as a whole, or you eat them as a mixture. Because if you eat them together, there's a Mishnah. There's a Mishnah that says that they are mitztarfin, they're combined. And the Gemara says when they combine, these things combine for achila and not for tuma. You see how it becomes very, very complex? They combine sometimes, they don't combine at other times. So because of that, anyway, we say that either way you can't eat it, but that there is a difference, as Tosfos explains, whether they are mixed or whether they are ba'in by themselves. That's going to make a big difference. Mixed versus ba'in. A little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little bit of that, of course, makes no difference. I mean, how you eat it, it's still going to be asur. But it will make a difference if they're mixed. Okay, but anyway, that's the Rambam. The Rambam says, ein isurim mitzarfin zeh lezeh. I'm sorry, ein isurim mevatlim zeh zeh. The Rosh seems to be saying that Isur Mevatlim Zeh Zeh because he quotes that Gemara as proof to this shaila that he has. In other words, one of his isberim, one of his explanations is, we have this concept of Isur Mevatlin, and therefore, this is an example of where one Isur would be Mevatel the other one. Very simple. Now, how does it really work? The way it works is because in the same way a heter is mevatel a isur is mevatel a isur. Now this is a good point to remember, and I will bring it up at the end of this year. Remember what the Rosh holds? What's the pshat in a heter mevatel isur? The isur becomes a heter. Now this is an important idea to keep in mind for today, for tonight, and for Thursday. According to the Rosh, isur becomes heter. Yeah, in other words, you have some isur that fell into a kedera of heter, and it's bottle. What's the meaning of bitul? The meaning of bitul, according to the Rosh, is that it's now mutter. This, what used to be asur, has transformed its entity and has become mutter. So therefore, no. If you see it, then you can. Of course, everybody agrees you have to remove it. Yes, because then what's bottle is the plita. It in itself, if you see it, there's no din of bitul. Whenever you see it, there's no din of bitul.
It has to be this bottle in order to have been converted.
Bitul means that you don't see it.
The bitul is the condition for the conversion.
Right. Because I don't see it, it's gone. Right. But the other hesber was that it's an inyan more of a kol de porish miruba porish. When I take one, I'm taking the mutter one. And what was one of the nafkaminas? We'll eventually learn it. That whether you could eat it all together or you cannot. According to the Rosh, you can eat the whole thing as one. You don't have to just take out one at a time. Because he holds right now, and the reason I say right now is because at some point in the future, what has just become mutter can become asur again. The famous choizer veneer. Okay? At some point, that which has become mutter, transformed as a result of the bittul, can, at some point in the future, become asur again. All right. But we're not there. We're not holding by the halachot of choizer veneer yet. But it's an important idea to keep in mind, which is, again, another reason why this sugya becomes so heavy. There's so many things going on. It's a bottle, but it can become again. Why can it be choizer veneer?
According to the Rosh.
Yeah, especially according to the Rosh. What's choizer veneer? Okay? So these are very important ideas to always keep in mind. All right. But the theory behind the isur mevatel isur is the same as what we've learned before, that if heter can make isur heter, isur can be mevatel or transform the other isur into something else. It's not what it used to be. In other words, it cancels it out. It has a koyach to nullify it. That's pretty much it, the hesber or the theory behind how it works. So as we said before, in this case, according to the Rosh, with this explanation, it would not make a difference whether they fell in together or they fell in one after another. It will not make a difference if noida or lo noida. Now, for those of you who learned Basar v'cholav, you're already familiar with noida and lo noida. Sometimes this noida can make a difference. Noida means whether he knew of it or not. For example, let's say you have 59 of heter. Dam falls in. Then chelev falls in. Did I know of the dam before I knew of the chelev? I knew dam fell in. Or I didn't know till after the chelev also fell in. Will it make a difference? According to some shittas, it may make a difference. Those who hold Chanan b'shar isurim, there is an idea that's brought down in the Torah's Chatas, I think, that whenever you have Chanan, and later on, more heter fell in, or another isur, does that undo the Chanan? No. If it's noida, it may not. What if it's lo noida? Yeah, you didn't know you had Chanan.
Bashar Isur.
Bashar Isur.
Do I make it?
Would it make it in the Shach? Doesn't seem to care whether it's noida lo noida with Chanan. Eventually, we'll learn it.
Didn't we say you have to mavatal isur?
No, but the Basar b'cholav, the Basar b'cholav noida comes about in toichev kaf choleves. Pamayim. That's where you come across the noida or lo noida. According to the Mechaber, it makes a difference. That's all. And that's a very interesting idea, which we may discuss another time, based on what the Mechaber says there, how he would hold here. But otherwise, noida and lo noida can sometimes make a difference. Let's just put it this way. But from what we can tell over here, it makes no difference. Noida, lo noida, they fell together, they fell one after another. The Rosh doesn't make a distinction, the Mechaber doesn't make a distinction. Okay, so far so good. We understand the idea of Isur Mebatel Isur, where one of the places in Shas it's taken from the Gemara in Zvachim. Okay. One of the difficulties, or one of the things that may cause trouble to this concept, where this concept begins to...
Regarding the
Yes.
source of Yisrael.
Yeah.
You explained it at the
Yeah.
Zvachim, the cause of the I can't tell the person what he is about to violate. And in order to penalize him, witnesses who warned him of about to violate,
Right.
he disregarded it.
Right.
But that goes unpenned on being over the Isser. When I need Ashara, if there is a missing, a lack of Ashara, that doesn't mean he didn't violate the Isser. It means that he'll not be penalized for it.
Exactly.
Because no one warned him. But why would the fact that he wouldn't be penalized because of missing warning be a basis to say that he didn't violate an Isser, or that the Isser was
Tosfos discusses all that. If you
Aha.
have the time, go through the Tosfos. A very nice Tosfos, brings down Rashi, gives his own explanation, and answers what appears to be a steer from there in the Ela. A very nice Tosfos, yeah. So if you have the chance, Tosfos goes through exactly through that. Yeah. It's Tosfos in Zvachim. Yeah. Yeah. Now, so we have a very nice concept. It's called Isur Mevatel Isur, yes or no, depending how you hold. But this particular concept gets into trouble. In other words, it may not hold in the following situation. We have another concept called Isurin mitztarfim zeim zeh. Okay, what does that mean? That certain Isurim, at least, can combine. Let's say you have a small piece of a nevela of a cow, less than a kazais. Small piece, less than a kazais, of a nevela of a deer. A small piece of a nevela of a chicken. It's all nevela. Right? It's all one shame. Even though it's not really one shame, the animals are different. It's one love. Nevela. Mitztarfin.
Same mean?
No. But it's the same love.
Fine.
And as the Rambam brings down in Hilchos Macholas Asuras, right? Kol nevelas mitztarfin. It's nevela. All right? Now, kol nevelas mitztarfos, because Isurim mitztarfim zeim zeh. Now, if you say Isurim mitztarfim zeim zeh, whenever you do at least, then you cannot say Isurim mevatlim zeh zeh. How do you say it in English? Self-exclusive? Mutually exclusive? Yeah, mutually exclusive. If you are going to apply this concept in a situation where you have various Isurim who happen to be mitztaref, like the various nevelas, right? Then you can't say Isurim mevatlin zeh zeh. Because if they combine, they don't cancel each other out.
Yeah.
That makes sense, doesn't it?
Sure.
Well, not always, but we will see. At least the two, we know, are mutually exclusive. In the event you have Isurim that are mitztarfin, okay, then the concept of mevatel zeh zeh does not apply. So far we have one example or one situation where you're not going to apply Isurim mevatel zeh zeh. So Tosfos asks, okay, that's the same Tosfos at the end. He asks, well, in Pigul and Noisar, they are mitztaref le'achila, even though they're different. The Gemara there says, they're not mitztaref le'tuma, because they're different, but they're mitztaref le'achila. Why is there mitztaref le'achila over there, Pigul Noisar? It's a xeris akosov, actually, because it's all, it's a form of, it all is kodesh. And because of that, it's a xeris akosov only there. That's one example where even though they're different, they're still mitztaref. So the question is, then how do you use that as an example? How do you use that as an example to say Isurim mevatlin zeh zeh? Even though they are mitztaref, even though they're not supposed to be mitztaref, they're mitztaref, we said it's xeris akosov. But nevertheless, how do you say, if they are mitztaref, that Isurim mevatlin zeh zeh in the example of where there was bitul, that particular example of Pigul Noisar are mevatel? Right? You understand the question? It's a good question. It appears to be a stira. In other words, I understand right now why they're mitztaref. They're not supposed to be. That's okay, an exception. Pigul and Noisar.
Pigul and Noisar are
Ba'achila. Even though they're not supposed to, it's an exception. Still, if they're mitztaref,
this is an opinion that is...
no, everybody agrees. The Gemara's maskana is they're mitztaref le'achila.
Even though there was a machlokes.
No.
Pigul, Tameh, and Isur.
Right, they're mitztaref. Remember, we're talking about the case of mitztaref isurim. You eat a little bit of this, a little bit of that. You're mitztaref to be over to get malchus.
So with the ashar and all that?
No, that's a separate Gemara.
But that was also Pigul.
This is Meila, Maseches Meila.
Yeah.
This is Mezachis
I understand, but that
Zvachim.
was
Maseches
also
Zvachim.
no?
Yeah, of course. So
there it was not mitzvah.
Tosfos asked the question.
Here it is mitzvah.
No. Tosfos asked, they're bottle here. If they're bottle, how could they be bottle if they're mitztaref?
That was in Ayin.
In Ayin Ches, yeah. Here we're talking about bitul. That means Isur mevatlin zeh zeh. There it says that they're mitztaref. If they're mitztaref, they're not bottle.
So Tosfos is actually quoting now this Gemara and asking on that.
On that Gemara. Says,
so it does look like the two Gemaras are contradictory.
Yes, that's the question. Okay. So I needed to go through that before I can go on to the next step. You see what we're going through here? Before we can make sense of anything, we have to clear up all the steers, all the kushas, make sure we understand all the concepts.
So again, we have one Gemara that says le'achila, Pigul and Noisar are mitzvah, and we have another Gemara that says because Pigul, Noisar, and Tuma are mevatel zeh et zeh, therefore there couldn't be an ashara. Therefore
Therefore Yisur mevatel zeh zeh. Right, from that example. So Tosfos said, well, wait a minute, they're mitztaref. If they're mitztaref, right? What about that? Tosfos says. So he gives two answers. He says in Zvachim, in our example, we're talking about a real me'urov. There's a taaruvos. There's a mixture. It happens. You have a mixture. So isur mevatel zeh zeh. In the Gemara of Melicha, we're not talking about bitul. We're not talking about taaruvos. We're talking about you eating a piece of this, a piece of that, and a piece of that.
They weren't mixed together.
Yeah, exactly. That's a simple poshet teretz, by the way. Yeah. Then he says something else. He's talking about over here that there's no malchus, and over there he's talking about the fact that you are over on achila. Now there was two separate ideas, so they're not necessarily contradicting each other. All right. So far, so good. Next point.
With respect to Azhara, not being Malchus, so
Right.
it's being an important point. But with respect to the conclusion, the Gemara over there draws that they're mevatlin zeh. That's taking it further.
Yeah, that's
That
what
would
Rish Lakish is taking a step further.
Yeah, that would not work with what Tosfos notwithstanding. When Tosfos says there, it's a different case because it's Azhara, it's Malchus.
Right.
Here we're talking about
It's a separate idea. Right,
Yeah,
it's a
so
separate
that would not
concept.
work with Rish
Right.
Lakish's they draws that it's mevatlin zeh.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. All right. Another important klal, that which is surim mitztarfim zel lezel, to be over on them, we must keep in mind that is as long as they are of the same shame, the same name. Nevela, like we said, they gave it an example of Nevela, right? Another example, which will help us understand the next year, is even though they're different names, Chala and Truma are really the same shame. Chala, Truma, Bikurim, Chala. Afroshas Chala, yeah? Chala, Bikurim, Truma, just different names,
Yeah.
the same thing.
Why?
Okay? They're all called Truma, according to the Torah. They're all together Truma.
A form of truma.
Yes.
So it's not given.
No, you do bring it, sure you do.
Oh, it was given to
Sure.
the
So they all consider Truma, even though they have different names. It's still the same thing. So this important rule of Isur Mitztarfim is only when they are the same shame, even though they may not appear to have the same name, as long as they belong to the same category, like the case I gave you with Chala, Bikurim, and Truma. One of the exceptions, the Rambam brings just a couple exceptions of completely different things, where for some reason they still combine. And he says one of them is Nevela and Treifa, because either way they're pretty much the same, he says. Still a Nevela. Understand? But otherwise, that's an important rule to keep in mind, that when do we say Isur Mitztarfim, and therefore since they're Mitztarf, they're not going to help us with our other klal of Mevatel Zeh Zeh, is when they share the same name, the same shame. Very important to keep that in mind. Okay. If so far we know of an Isur Mevatel Zeh Zeh, we know that Isur sometimes Mitztarfim Zeh Zeh when they have the same shame, and when they do Mitztarf, then they're not Mevatel Zeh Zeh. Okay? So now the question will be, remember, so far we've only discussed one of the explanations of the Rosh, that he takes this, or he learns this, from the sugya of Isur Mevatel Zeh Zeh. Okay. If that's the case, now that we know when Isur Mevatel Zeh Zeh runs into a trouble, when it's Isurim of the same name, it won't work, right? That's one example. Then what will be in the following scenarios? What will be when we have two different Isurim? They're different. So they're not mistarf, okay? But they have the same flavor. Tevel, Orla, Kilea, Keren, which we'll be talking about, which is what makes the sugi even bigger and bigger. The halachas are so different over there. Tevel, Orla, Kilea, Keren. I mean, there's all kinds of Isurim that they may be different Isurim, but it may be the same thing there. Same flavor. This, I don't know, tomato or whatever, this fruit, right? Same thing. Just this one has this one has this Isur. So they share this. They're the same flavor, but they have different names, different Isurim. What will you say? They're cooked together. This is the case. 59 Zaysim. 2 Isurim fall in, not Dam and Chelav. Why not Dam and Chelav? Because Dam not only is different than Chelav, in Isur it's also different in flavoring. Now I'm giving you one scenario, after I give you the introduction, or where they actually have 2 different names, so they're not mitztarf, but they have the same tam. So the Bach, the Pri Megadim, the Pri Chodosh say they are mitztarf to make it aser. In other words, they would not be mevatel zeh zeh. even though they're different isurim. What spoiled it for them here?
Same taste.
The same taste. Oh, if you have the same taste, well, at some point, we got to get rid of the taste, tam ke'erkin, or whatever you want to say. That the tam is there regardless. So when you're cooking up this mixture, even though they have different names, you run into trouble again because the tam is the same. You see? You see how it starts getting...
but it's a bit of a problem nonetheless, because though the tam is the same, the only reason tam is a problem is because tam is reminding us of an isser.
Right.
And the isser it's reminding us of a different isser. So the same tam is reminding us of different isser. So there you could again argue on them and say no.
Okay, yeah.
You could say again it's not mitzvah.
Yeah. Anyway, the question, however, would be, maybe we'll talk about that another time also, but the question would be, what about yovish b'yovish? What if you're not cooking them? You have two different kinds of isurim falling in, right? And different tam. Then what? This would be a machlokes of the Rambam the Rosh, perhaps, or whether you say isur mevatlin zeh or not. By yovish, you wouldn't have the problem, supposedly. Because if there are two different kinds of isurim, they're not mitztaref. So when does it become a problem? When you cook it. Remember we brought it up once, that if you have an isur being mevatel in heter, but later on you took this yovish mixture and you cooked it, what would happen? Right? Because what we haven't learned it yet. The yovish, it all depends if it's min be'mino or min be'eno mino. We know we need shishin be'eno mino just in case you may cook it. Right? But what if it's yovish and you cook it?
I don't know. Isn't cooking? Don't we say cooking always implies water?
The what?
Don't we say that cook water?
Yes.
So we're saying it's being cooked. So why would it still be a category of yavish or yavish?
No, if you cooked it, it's not yovish. I'm saying you started off, the issue was misbatel. Now, if it's yovish lechor, it's always yovish. It's min bemino. It's not a problem. The problem min bemino, then you always need shir because maybe you may cook it, right? But let's say there may be a situation where it was bottle somehow before, and now you cook it. That's what I was trying to give this kind of a scenario.
We didn't learn yavish b'yavish. That's why it's a little difficult to see. How is bittul b'yavish different than lach b'lach? How is it different?
Okay, we'll get to it. But this would be a question. In other words, you have the case of two isurim that are different, so they're not mitzdaref, but it's in yavish. They fell in yavish, and because they fell in yavish, if you cook them later, of course, it may become a problem. But let's say you're not cooking them, and you hold of isur mevatin zeh. Is this okay? Can one isur? The question here is only one. Does one isur help me cancel out the other isur? That's all I want to figure out over here at this point.
So by lach b'lach we would say.
So according to all these poskim who hold that the tam is different, and because of that, even though they're different names, you still have a problem. They're not mevatel zeh.
If the tam is the same.
The tam is the same, but what if you don't cook it? If you don't cook it, perhaps we resort back to the machlokes of the Rambam and the Rosh. If there is such a machlokes, what do you say? Isur mevatim zeh or not? Because if they're not the same isur, they're not mitzdaref. If they're not mitzdaref, then maybe one cancels out each other.
In terms of what? In terms of statistics?
No. I need 60. I need 60 to do mevatel the isur, but I will only have 60 if I use.
That's what's confusing me. Because I would that.
Or roiv, for whatever I need. Or roiv. Either or. It doesn't have to be 60. It could be roiv too.
Right.
I will only have what I need to be mevatel if I use the isur.
In other words, when I take out a piece now, if we go by, statistically speaking, the piece that I'm taking is more likely to be the permitted item than the forbidden one. Because I have a majority of permitted items over forbidden.
Yes.
But if I have, let's say, two forbidden items that are not mitzdaref, with one permitted one, then I have two against one in either case.
Yeah.
But if I'm going to take out one, it's more likely that it will be one of the forbidden ones, either the one or the other, than the permitted one. Because I've got two, albeit not mitzdaref, isurim against one heter. So it'll be either one isur or the other isur, yes?
Yeah.
More likely so than the one heter amongst three. I have a 2-to-1 majority of isurim, even when I'm not mitzdaref.
But you're talking about an example of the majority isurim.
Yeah. No.
Well, you can take
Well, if I have one isur, we said, no, right. Roiv would be an example.
Roiv heter.
Roiv heter. If I have roiv heter, I don't have a question of mevatel isser. If I have roiv heter, it's the heter that's mevatel.
Yeah, but that's the problem here. I don't have roiv heter by itself.
Exactly, but we're talking about roiv.
But we're still talking about roiv, not shishim.
So right. So what is the example for roiv? I have 3 items.
Right.
Of which
one, and one. Oh, I see what you're saying.
In the case
Okay.
of heter, 2 would be heter, and 1 would be an isser.
Right.
So I can say roiv. Here I have 2 isurim because instead of mevatel isser, I have to have 2 isurim.
Right.
Plus 1 heter. And now the question is, are the 2 isurim going to be mevatel each other? And my
Right.
question is, by 2 heter and 1 isser, I can see how it's mevatel a roiv statistically, because whatever I take, I can always say, out of 2 to 1, this is more likely in probability.
Oh, I see.
Statistically speaking, it's more likely to be a heter.
Right.
If I have 2 isurim and 1 heter, then it's more likely to be one of the 2 isurim than the
Right.
heter statistically
That's a
speaking.
good point.
So would it be about 1?
A good point. And what you're saying is, in that case of 2 to 1, you wouldn't have what the Rosh says at least, or actually what the others say, that called
So
the
the
Porish
fact that-
Meruba Porish. If you were to take
Right.
one.
So
Yeah.
the fact that it's not mitzdaref doesn't help me,
Yeah.
because statistically, nonetheless, I'm more likely to have an isser in my hand right now than a heter.
Right. So anyway, that you have a good point in the example where you have 3 items, 3 pieces. You have 1 falling into 1, so you have 2. All you have is 2, so it's not bottle. Now you have another piece that falls in, that is also usher, right? That is that supposedly cancels the other one out. It supposedly cancels because it's sur mevatnin zeh et zeh, but that would not mean that you could eat the whole thing. Why can't you eat the whole thing? Because now you have 2 isurim against 1.
Exactly.
You don't have a real bittul.
It's not going to be
Yeah.
the same gather of
Yeah.
isser, not the same category of isser.
Yeah.
It's going to be one or the other isser.
Yeah, right. In that example, we have to think about that. We have to think about how it would relate.
Now, with respect
Yeah.
to ashara
Right.
in the Gemara,
Sure.
you wouldn't be able to be masir, right?
Right.
Because let's say one of them was nevela, and the other one was hanan basar b'chalal, and the third one was kosher. Let's say they're all cow meat.
Right.
One is a piece of cow meat that's nevela, one is a piece of cow meat, one is a basar b'chalav cow meat.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't
Yeah.
be able to warn me whether I'm over Hanan or I'm over Nevela,
Yeah.
because
Well-
I don't know which one of the 2.
We'll talk about it. Remind me. We'll talk about it maybe next time because the Aruch HaShulchan speaks about your case.
Interesting.
Right. Just I didn't have enough time to go into that, but that would be a scenario that I think he brings up. What would we say back then? In essence, all I'm trying to say is that the problem would mostly apply to a situation where we have flavoring. In a situation where there's no flavor, the time does not make a difference. The Isur Mevatel Zeh Zeh is still applicable, even because the Isurim are different. The question is in what scenario would you have it? In the case of course, of Yovesh. But that's a good point. We'll have to see how that works out. And I think the Aruch HaShulchan gets into that. But that would be one scenario. So you have the Pri Chodosh, the Bach, the Pri Megodim, that say that even though the Isurim are different, even though the Isurim, are different, but because the Tam is the same, they are mitzdarf to make it Asur. I think I saw the Chavas Das, he says, according to the Rosh, there's no Isur Torah in this case, even though the taste is the same, it would only be the Rabbanon. According to the Pri Megodim and the Chazon Ish, there's no Malchus, but there would be an Isur Torah either way. Okay, so there's a machloikas on how to deal with this situation. Okay, let's talk about another scenario. What if you have 2 pieces that have the same Isur? Okay, the other example is you have 2 Isurim of the same kind, but the Tam is different. Okay? The first example is the 2 Isurim are different, the Tam is the same. In this case, this example is you have 1 Isur, they're both Asur, the Tam is different. And the example that I saw bringing down is like, let's say you have grapes and dates of Tevel. They're both Tevel, one is grapes and one is dates. Also, Machlokes HaPoskim, the Isur Beheter says they're Mevatel Zeh et Zeh. Why? Because it's the Tam is different. The Tam is different. And they should be mevachel zeh. Everybody else that I saw, Mickey Beger, I think Primegodim, Chavas Das, seems to be saying that they're not. Not only are they not mevatel, they're mitzarf to aser the whole thing, and you need 120 connected both isurim. Why? Because it's all the same isur. Even though the flavors is a little bit different, it doesn't make a difference.
If you have
Yeah.
same issue, but the meats taste when people pay more for what.
Right. There may be a slight difference in the taste.
Does that fit to the?
That's another question that's brought down in the posting, is how much of the flavor has to be different for it to be considered different.
So that's how the range.
I saw a Prima Godim that talks about, he brings down the following example. You have lamb, meat, and let me see if I wrote it down here. Lamb, bull, shor, keves, and off.
Chicken, bull,
and lamb.
goat.
No, keves is lamb. Lamb chops. Yeah, sheep's. Yeah. He brings down this case, and I saw it brought down in a few places, but it's always best to look at the makor. You see exactly what he says, what he has in mind. And there, he seems to be saying that they're not exactly the same flavor. Even though somebody else I saw bringing it down, that even though they do have a similar flavor. The fact is that they're not the same. You can actually taste the difference between each one of them. Do we consider them as the same flavor or not? Somebody brought up this question. Legabe, this scenario, if they're same tam or not tam, but it's the same isser. And I was saying, when I saw that, I was saying, what difference would it make if it's the same flavor or not, according to the ones that hold? According to the ones that hold that if it's different flavor, right? Different flavor, but it's the same isser, still, it's the same isser, so they're mitzdarf, and it's not mevatel zeh. Kol shekain, if it's the same flavor, right? In other words, it doesn't help me if you tell me, according to the ones that hold, that if it's a different flavor, it still asers. Even if it's the same, in other words, even if you tell me it's the same flavor, it wouldn't make a difference. The fact that something has the same shame really doesn't make a difference. In other words, according to the ones that hold that it's not, if it's not a same flavor for sure, right? Okay, it would still aser here. So in other words, even if they would be the same flavor, what difference does it make? In other words, I'm not sure I understood what difference here it would make once you hold the things that have the same name.
Same name in the isser, or they're called the name of the same name.
Yeah.
Is it the name is going on an isser, or the same name as a food?
You mean the specific
They're both calling tomato, or the isser.
No. Here, this is the example that I saw that they were bringing down the Shem of Permagon.
Right.
There are three names. I'm saying there are three different kinds of meats, but it's the same isser. Okay.
What do you mean
It's nevela.
Oh, I see.
Let's say it's a nevela. You have oif, shor, keves. If it's the same flavor, okay, it's for sure. It's for sure. We know from before if it's the same flavor, right? Same isser, no problem. I mean, it's not mitzdarf. I mean, it's mitzdarf, and therefore it's not mevatel each other. Will it make a difference if it's a different flavor, slightly different flavor? Right? In other words, either way, it's going to be.
If you have three items that are nevela,
Right.
and they taste just a little different from the other,
Yeah.
would this in taste prevent the mitzdaref under isser name?
No, what I'm saying is, according to, it was somebody who brought this up as that these three have the same flavor. Okay? They have the same flavor, and therefore, they are not mevatel each other. On the contrary, same flavor, it enhances the whole thing, and you don't have the beetle. Why do you have to tell this to me that they have the same flavor? Even if they don't have the same flavor, it's not going to make a difference. According to the ones that hold, that once you have the same isser, even if they have different flavors, they're still not mevatel each other. They still are mitzdaref. Then what do you? What's the chiddush here that they have the same flavor? So I'm not sure that it's very, very clear what the Pri Megadim holds, even though it appears to me that he holds that they're not exactly the same flavor. And that's the chiddush. In other words, that is a chiddush, that when things do have the same lav and they're a different flavor, we don't say that they're mervatel, they're mitzvah to each other, but to say that they have the same flavor, what chiddush are you telling me here? In other words, I don't see.
We say they're mitzvah, and we don't say they're
right, because they have the same shame. So far, from what I've seen, that regardless, if you have the same tam, or if you have the same shame, if one is going to be the same, you're going to run into trouble with this klal of the Rosh, that the Rosh learns here, of Isur Mevatin Zed Zed, that in this scenario, where the two would share the same shame, or would share the same tam, okay?
the same in the Isser, same tam in the substance. It's the same tam.
Right. You understand what I'm saying?
So in either
now that
case-
we understand the case of Isur Mevatin Zed Zed, now we understand how Isur Mitztarfin works. We saw several poskim that would hold that as long as one was the same between Isurim, either in name or in tam, it would pose a problem to this halacha if it involved such Isurim.
The reason I'm always
That we would not always say Isur Mevatin Zed Zed, even
Right.
you do say Isur Mevatin Zed Zed.
Right.
It would depend on
Even
the
the Rosh
situation.
would say the bottom line.
Perhaps, yeah, perhaps, sure.
I'm
Yeah,
constantly
sure.
asking you about
Yeah.
the name, because remember we had the Ramah who were saying that if they have the same name, it tastes different.
Right,
And Shulchan. So when you're saying name now, you don't mean the same name as a.
right.
You
We're
mean
talking
the
about
same
love
name is the Isser.
as the Isser. That's what we mean. Right. Now, before we go on to the next point, we will eventually see, we'll elaborate maybe more a little bit about that on Thursday, that when you do have the same name of an Isser falling in the future, then you have the concept of Choizer Veneer. So this concept of Choizer Veneer, as the Shach brings down over here, is the reason why Chelev and Dam here are mevatel or cancel each other out is because they're very, very different.
Both in taste as well as in Isser.
Yeah. Once you have the same one, just keep in mind, the Shach says, we'll learn it later. Keep in mind that once you have the same Isser falling in again later, you're going to have Choizer Veneer.
When you say exactly.
He doesn't distinguish. He just basically says the same kind of thing. The same kind of thing. Yeah, exactly.
So let me ask you if this would also apply.
Right.
So a nevela chicken, kazais, falls into kazaisim, it's mispatel.
Right.
A little later, kazais of nevela cow falls into that mixture.
Right.
So that's nevela, the kazais of nevela chicken is chosev and yo. Now you have two kazaisim of isser of nevela, extra potatoes, and all of a sudden thing becomes isser.
Oh, that's the question, right?
That was the same thing.
Right. So the
That would be
Shach,
the same thing.
the Shach seems to be saying, right? That's what he says later on. Ava b'min echad le'olam choizer v'nir. What does min echad mean?
Minachad of isser or minut.
Right. Okay. That may be a good question. Does he mean always in any case, if it's exact, right? Because once we say Isur Mitztarfin, once you understand the concept of Isur Mitztarfin when they're from the same shame, that's what Choizer V'nir really, really means. It means it's Mitztarf later on too.
No, but if the
Yeah.
if the Rosh bottom,
Oh,
it becomes heter,
Bottom.
it's,
Oh.
it's gone forever.
right. Oh, yeah, that's
Is it gone?
right. Is it gone forever or not? Yeah, that's what we'll discuss next time around
And if
too.
it's not gone forever, then how is it even temporal?
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, we have a few more minutes, so let's just cover a few more points here. In the case of the second scenario, in the Mechaber, where you have two Kederas, then we did briefly point out that would only be true according to the ones that don't hold Chanan B'Shar Yisurim. Because if you have Dam in 29, Chelev in 30, then they mix, they've already become Chanan.
Sure.
Okay? They've already become Chanan. So everybody's saying, basically, hey, this only works according to the ones that don't hold Chanan B'Shar Yisur. Or, unless you're talking about the case of Basar and Chalav separately. Or, as the Shach says, you could be talking about Chanan Lach Belach Behefset Meruba. There is a situation where Lach Belach Behefset Meruba, you can rely on the Shittas that hold there's no Chanan in Lach Belach. So if that's the case of the Mechaber, right? And it's a Lach Belach and it's Behefset Meruba, okay, maybe that's why the Ramah did not say anything about it. Because the Ramah should have said something. He just went along with it. How do we know he went along with it? Because he says, Kol Shekain, if you have Basar and Chalav. Kol Shekain means that he agrees with the Mechaber. How could he agree? So that they say that either he must be talking about Lach Belach in that situation. But there's no doubt that whoever says that this is a Chanan problem is right. That for those who claim Chanan B'Shar Yisurim, of course this wouldn't work. So the
it's
question,
all simultaneous.
so, right? Unless, of course, it's all at the same time. Very good. But so the question is really more in the Ramah than in the Mechaber. Okay, so we really have three nafkaminas here, even according to those who hold Chanan b'Shar Isurim. This halacha does teach us three nafkaminas, three ideas, 3 points, and that you have in the notes, that you will see also, that if they fell in together into 59, then that's okay. There's no Chanan. That would be one nafkamina. You have bitul zeh. Or you have milk and meat falling up 2 separate pots, then there's no Chanan. The third situation would be where you have a kazais of dam or chele falling into 60. 60. So it's completely gone. And then the dam or the other one falling in later on, and of course there's more than a kazais, you can rely that you now have 61 kazaisim and not just 60. Because that kazais, original kazais, the felon became bottom, completely became heter. So that would be, everybody would be in agreement somewhat in those scenarios. Even if you hold Chanan b'Shar Isurim, those would still work with our example.
Or you don't even have to say that the answer that this fell in, you can say that it was a sababel, and it would still be a case of misbabel if you don't say it was converted to.
Yeah, but once it's 60, it's gone. According to the Rosh especially.
According to the law.
Yeah.
But even if you say according to the say Roy, which admits that it's still there, but just says that you can always
look away from it.
You're taking from it is not. According to them, also it would work because it would still be.
Yes, in that it would work. Sure, in that work it would work because of mivat zeh. Okay, real quickly. What's the second hesber of the Rosh? The third one we won't have time to cover. The second hesber is a very simple one. The Rosh says, you know why this works? Misvora. He says the word misvora. It's common sense. The tam of chelev and the tam of dam are so different. They simply cancel each other out. You don't need a gemara of isur mevatlin zeh.
Once again.
The Rosh says, you know what? Let's forget about gemara of isur mevatlin zeh. Let's forget about it for a moment. He says, it's a svara. It's logical. It's common sense. Okay? Now, this is a very important point that he makes. It's good that he mentions this. He saves us from a lot of trouble here. He says it's a svara. Now, why is this so good? Because the crazy Uflaisi begins his whole pirush on this seif with the following question. He says, really? That's what you're telling me? That it's mevatel zeh, it's bottle? That's pashut. He says, what's the chiddush? Who would think differently? The crazy Uflaisi begins with this question here on this seif. What's the big deal here? What's the big chiddush here? How do you know it would be okay? You have any doubts? Give it to a kafela. As Mechaber says all the time, whenever you have isurim falling in, that you can give it to a kafela. So, what's the big deal here? If you're in doubt, give it to a kafela. You understand? So, he's right. In other words, what's the chiddush over here? So the chiddush will be, according to the way Christopher Place explains, the reason why the Mechaber is saying this, what's the chiddush? For those who don't hold that you can give it to a kafela when it's less than 60, like Rashi, for example, right? In this case, they would all agree if it's isur mevaten zeh. Oh, you know what?
Give it to a kafela. You
You don't need a kafela. You don't need a kafela. In other words, you're right. This is, in other words, the reason the Rosh says, the Kreisha Place explains, the reason the Rosh gives 3 explanations, one of them being, Isur Mevatlin says, that means that you can use that explanation even for those who have a problem with kafela. That in this case it wouldn't be a problem. Isur Mevatlin zeh. You understand the Kreisha Place's question, what is the Mechaber, what's the Chiddush over here? Of course, what's the big deal? You have a question, you have a doubt, give it to kafela. So what is he telling us here? Who would say it's usher? Yeah, well, exactly. Well, what's the question here?
For Rashi.
The question is, for Rashi, for those who don't hold Isur Mevaten Zeh, well, the Rosh says, I do hold Isur Mevaten Zeh. For those who hold, you can't give it to kafela, well, you don't need it. Isur Mevaten Zeh. And the second explanation, that this is a svara, this helps us with the Dogel Miravovo, which has his own attack over here on everybody. He says, how does the Mechaber go with the Rosh? Why doesn't the Mechaber pass like the Rambam? Why does the Mechaber not even mention the Rambam? How could he just go with the Rosh? The Rambam says clearly, Surah are not Mevatel Zeh. What happened? Well, where does he take this from? You see how it becomes very interesting here? Dogel Mervava has his own fight over here. But once you introduce the concept of svara here, it's a svara, he says, yes, he does have a point. It is a good svara. If it's all we're concerned about is flavor really here ultimately, they're not the same flavor, you won't feel it. If you don't feel it, then you don't have a problem here. What's the difference if it's a heter being mevatel the iser, or if it's an iser being mevatel the iser? What's the difference if we're not going to feel it anyway? Do I care who's removing the flavor? Do I care where that is coming from? In the end, I'm concerned about if there's tam or not. I don't care who or what is taking care of it, what's canceling out. So it's a good svara, you understand? It's a good svara.
Is assuming
Yeah.
that makes them each cancels the other one out. And that he remain.
Yeah, but that's a different situation.
That's a different
That's a different category.
So the question I have,
Yeah.
is this for a work when you have one?
No, obviously no, it doesn't work. You're right. It is brought down and it doesn't work. Right.
Well, 60 would work anyway. But
Right.
all we're doing is we're using it here to keep the 60, but in the case it wouldn't work, why would the fact that I only have 59
I
work any
questioned
better?
it because there was svara. That was my question.
But the svara is helping us complete the shishim. The svara doesn't accomplish more than I can say I have shishim now.
Yeah.
But I have a quick question that
Sure.
belongs in here.
Uh-huh.
And that is, if one of the Turim is a type of endurance that I'm not allowed to have a benefit. So the challah, one of them is meat milk.
Right.
So I'm not allowed to have a benefit. If it helps me mevatel the other isser,
The Isur
is
V'Hanoah.
such a thing called benefit.
One more time.
If one of the two isurim that join the 59
Right.
enter is basar b'chalav, hanan,
Right.
something that I'm not allowed to have a benefit.
Right.
Is being mevatel the other isser, say chaylev,
Right.
is this called having a benefit from basar b'chalav?
No, that's not called having a benefit. I thought you were going to ask something else. There is a whole diyun on. I think the crazy place it goes through that too. Yes, case replacing, where you can be mevat. If isur mevatel, isur also helps with hano, things that are also behano. They were also behano. Can they become mizbatel now that something else is mevatel?
In other words, not only the gabe eating them, but also
The gabe hano too. Yeah.
That's another whole.
Yeah.
Whereas for Basar B'chalav, we talk about
Right.
eating. Taaruvot, we've never really
Right.
dealing with the infants.
Yeah, but we're
It's
not.
sort
So
of
yeah. There's no question here. But I think that's also handled. So let's just cover this second explanation of the Rosh.
Oh, but I didn't answer. So you're saying that
No, that wouldn't be a
being
benefit.
mevatel another isser
It's not called no. Lechora not. No, I don't believe so. So we have a second explanation that it's a svara, and the svara works very, very well, and everybody agrees with that. Now, what's interesting about this is that if everybody agrees with the svara, then we have peace between the Rambam and the Rosh too. We have peace with the Rambam and the Rosh for two reasons. One is an explanation given by the crazy flavor, and one is pashut, common sense, and I think everybody else would agree with it as well. The crazy place, he says, first of all, the Rambam and does not necessarily say Yisur Mevatel is not Mevatel is because he holds like Rabbi Elyahu. It's not necessarily the case. It just could be that in the case of Pigul and Noisar, he would say that. Over there, for whatever reason. Over there, could be that he held what he held.
To that particular
Specific, yeah. But not necessarily everywhere else. And there is, it does make some sense. So the crazy place is saying it's not necessarily true that he is choosing Rish Lakish, he is choosing Rav Elyahu, and you have a machlokes whether he's choosing Rav Elyahu. He says that's not necessarily so. And you know what? Here, in our case of Dam and Chaylev, even the Rambam would agree. Because they're so different, because the Tam is mevatel each other, because they are completely different, this is a very different scenario. Like the Rosh says, his second explanation of Svara, the Rambam perhaps would buy that too. And if that's the case, that the Rambam never meant, either you say the Rambam doesn't hold necessarily Isur are not mevatel. You can say that he doesn't hold it, either that. Maybe he does hold it's okay to say that here. That's one shot. And over there he just used it as an example, for whatever reason, by Pikul and Noisar. But it could be there's no machlokes. Or you could simply say differently, regardless of how the Rambam holds in Isur mevatel and zeh. Here he would agree, because it's a svara. It's a svara that the two would cancel each other out. Why not? The flavor is gone. And because it's a svara, and because the Rambam would agree, now we have an answer to the Dogel Mervava. Dogel Mervava, you know why the Mechaber didn't look into the Rambam? Because even the Rambam would agree here. There was no machlekes. That's why he went with this Tshuva Sarash, because even in this case, if the svara is the explanation that the two cancel each other out, then of course, he doesn't have to go with the Rambam. There's no machlekes at all here. In other words, in this scenario, everybody apparently would agree, perhaps. Once you hold it's svara, because once you introduce Isurim Mevatel, it says that you're running into trouble. You saw how there's a whole sugya, there's the questions about it, when yes and when not. But once you say it's a svara, everybody would agree, even the Rambam. So far so good. So far we've covered the two explanations. The third one opens up a whole different...
So when you say svara, you say because it's plausible.
Yeah, it makes sense. We're talking about tam here. We're talking about getting rid of the tam. And the svara is,
Not just plausible.
why do I care what removes the tam? Either a heter or another isser. Why should I care?
For Dinklush, it's a...
Yeah. Why should I care as long as the tam is gone? The third one has to do with the Mishnah in Orla. Very interesting Mishnayos, and that is really what made everything a lot more complex. There's several Mishnayos there about Truma and Orla and Kilar Karen falling into each other. That I'm going to have to learn with you, the Mishnayos, so you could see there's a whole there's a whole machlokes there on how to learn the Mishnah. There's a machlokes between the Rambam Rash and the Ovadim Bartenora and the Rosh on how you learn the Mishnah. And I'd like to say after this machlokes that it would depend on this other machlokes of do you hold Isur Mevatel in Zeh. In other words, that's what I'm thinking of saying, of why do they learn differently in that Mishnah? Because perhaps they hold this way, they hold this way. But anyway, that is what makes everything a little bit more complex because of all these additional details. But just to finish off, what we've covered so far is based on our understanding of how Isser really becomes Heter, on how the Rosh really learned. Will it make a difference if we learn the other way? The other ones who learn that Isser does not really become Heter, it's just called the Porish Meruba Porish. It's an Indian. In other words, the Isser is still there, called the Porish Meruba Porish. In other words, what is that saying? Called the? It's really saying the Isser is still there.
But whatever I separate from the mixture will most likely come from the majority mixture.
Right. I'm going to eat. I'm taking from the majority, and the majority is Heter. In other words, even though it's Achre Rabim Lehatois, right? Even though it's a form of Ruba Kekuloi. In other words, there's no transformation necessarily like the Rosh learns, right? It's more of an union of that what I'm taking now at any given time is Heter, but the Isser is still around. If the Isser is still around, maybe that will make a difference if something else happens later on, as opposed to if I say it's completely gone. Will it or will it not? That brings in Chayzer Veneer, right? And that brings in the other Mishnayos too. Can I say Tziruf? If the Isser is really not gone, if the Isser is really not gone, Tziruf means combining. Because what were we just mechadish? We were mechadish that according to everybody supposedly, if you have 60 to begin with, and one that's usher, and it's bottle, that one that was bottle helps in the future. It helps that if something else falls in that is usher, it combines with the heter 61 now to be mevatel. Everybody agrees with this.
If the other one is a little more than it
It's both the Rosh and together.
Huh?
Because it's both the manure, then it's not gone.
Oh.
But in this, if it's different, then
So the problem is, yes, no. Right. Will it make a difference? Because Chayzer Veneer, that's where it's going to make a difference. Chayzer Veneer, when will it make a difference? Will it make a difference in Shishim? Will it make a difference in more than Shishim? Because there are cases of things that are bottled in 100 or 200. So what's Chayzer Veneer really, really mean? When is it Chayzer Veneer? Immediately if you don't have enough, but you had before? So right away, well, now you're out of luck. You don't have 60. A little bit more of an Isser fell in, depending, of course, what kind of an Isser fell in. Is it really gone? Or do we say, it's completely bottled. It's completely bottled. And now, you start all over again. This is a big machlokes. There's a big machlokes over this. If we say, till when is it bottled? There's a sugya. There's a whole sugya of it's in mikveh. In mikvois you have this, and in yain nesach of an isur falling a whole day.
And slowly
beam it bottle. Every time it falls, it's bottled, it's gone. But eventually,
it adds up to more than 50%.
it adds up to more than 50%. Are you always going to say, or you say Choseh V'Nir? This is what we're running into right now, and that's why this concept or this different interpretations of heter or Isser becoming heter or not may make a difference. Mr. Hashem will cover it next time.